May 30th, 2024, the European Union passed the Right to Repair Directive. Manufacturers must now provide spare parts at reasonable prices, publish repair information, and stop blocking independent repairs. It's illegal to use software techniques that obstruct repairs. Historic victory for consumers, right? Except if you own many BMW models manufactured after June 2020, your engine control unit is completely locked by encryption. Want to repair it? You must physically remove the ECU from your car, package it carefully, and mail it to a company in Finland called FEMTO, widely regarded as the only operation that can reliably unlock these ECUs. Cost? €500 plus shipping, plus labor to remove and reinstall. The EU gave you the right to repair. BMW software says access denied, and every other manufacturer is watching this model succeed. This isn't about one locked ECU, it's about the systematic transformation of car ownership into car licensing. The EU Right to Repair Directive specifically prohibits using hardware or software techniques that obstruct repairs. Yet according to automotive industry sources, approximately 90% of vehicles sold in the EU in 2024 came with embedded telematics systems, factory-installed surveillance and control infrastructure owned entirely by manufacturers. Every repair, every part, every software update is now controlled by original equipment manufacturer platforms you can't access. Independent mechanics, the people who've kept European cars running for generations, are systematically locked out. Not by regulation, not by skill gaps, by deliberate software encryption that EU law supposedly bans but manufacturers deploy anyway. The dealer management software market alone is projected to reach €7.86 billion by 2030, growing at over 10% annually. That's not the cost of making software, that's the profit from controlling who can and cannot repair your car. The legislation exists, the enforcement doesn't. And while regulators write directives, manufacturers write code that make those directives irrelevant. If discovering that your right to repair is completely fake infuriates you, subscribe now, because I'm about to expose exactly how manufacturers are circumventing EU law, who profits from your lockout, and the terrifying future where you don't truly own anything you've paid for. Let's start with what the law actually says. The EU Right to Repair Directive, adopted May 30, 2024, requires manufacturers to provide spare parts and tools at a reasonable price, and explicitly prohibits using contractual clauses, hardware or software techniques that obstruct repairs. They cannot impede the use of second-hand or 3D printed spare parts by independent repairers. Sounds comprehensive, right? On paper, it's everything consumers needed. The directive applies to all products with existing repair requirements under EU law, which includes vehicles. Member states have until July 31, 2026 to implement it international law. The penalties? Violations can be prosecuted under existing GDPR-style enforcement, with fines theoretically reaching millions. But here's the brutal reality. The law addresses physical obstruction to repairs. Software locks aren't explicitly covered with enforcement teeth. The word software appears once, prohibiting software techniques that obstruct repairs, but provides zero guidance on what constitutes obstruction versus legitimate security measures. Manufacturers immediately recognize this loophole. They're not physically preventing repairs, they're not refusing to sell parts. They're just making those parts useless without their proprietary software authorization. It's technically compliant with the letter of the law without completely destroying its spirit. The motor vehicle block exemption regulations, which have governed automotive repair access since 1995, require manufacturers to release technical data and repair instructions to independent mechanics. This was reinforced under Euro 5 and Euro 6 emissions regulations, but technical data doesn't include encryption keys. It doesn't include software authorization codes. It doesn't include access to manufacturer-controlled telematics platforms. And that's just the legislative failure. Wait until you hear about the FEMTO monopoly, the single company that holds European car repair hostage because BMW decided encryption was more profitable than compliance. Here's where it gets genuinely dystopian. Since June 2020, BMW has deployed a new encryption protocol in many of their engine control units and digital motor electronics. These ECUs, the computers that control everything from fuel injection to turbocharger boost, are completely locked at the factory level. The encryption is so comprehensive that even dealer-level diagnostic tools can't fully access them without manufacturer authorization. Want to tune your car? Locked out. Want to repair it after warranty? Severely limited. Want an independent mechanic to diagnose a fault? They'll see error codes but can't access the underlying systems. This affects a substantial portion of BMWs produced after mid-2020. which means potentially millions of vehicles across Europe are essentially trapped in the dealer network. The technical details matter. BMW uses what's called bootloader protection, encryption of the ECU's core operating system that prevents any unauthorized access or modification. Pre-June 2020 ECUs could be bench unlocked by competent mechanics using widely available tools. Post-June 2020, only one company can crack them. That company is FEMTO, based in Finland. Within the tuning and independent repair community, they're widely regarded as the only reliable option for unlocking modern BMW ECUs. The process isn't simple. You must physically remove the ECU from your vehicle, which on some models requires removing the intake manifold and other components, adding hours of labor. You then package it securely and ship it internationally to Finland. FEMTO performs the unlock, then ships it back. You reinstall it. Cost? The unlock service alone is 450 to 600 euros depending on ECU model. Add removal labor, shipping both ways with insurance, and reinstallation, and you're looking at between 800 and 1200 euros total for the privilege of accessing hardware you own to perform repairs you're legally entitled to do. Mercedes-Benz has deployed similar systems. Audi is following suit. Volkswagen Group, which owns Audi, VW, Porsche, Seat, Skoda, and others, is systematically implementing this across their entire range. Toyota uses it on the Supra. The business model is spreading because it works. But BMW's ECU locks are just hardware encryption. The real control mechanism is far more insidious. Embedded telematics systems that give manufacturers remote control over every aspect of your vehicle. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Industry estimates suggest that around 80 to 90% of vehicles sold in the EU in 2024 came with embedded OEM telematics systems. That's not an optional feature anymore, it's mandatory infrastructure installed at the factory level. The vast majority of new cars are now connected devices transmitting data to manufacturer-controlled servers. These systems aren't just for navigation or emergency calling, they're comprehensive vehicle control platforms. OEM Telematics monitors engine performance, tracks driving behavior, logs maintenance intervals, controls software updates, and increasingly determines which repairs are authorized. Manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, and Stellantis all operate proprietary telematics platforms. Connected Drive, MeConnect, WeConnect, and others. Here's why this destroys independent repair. These platforms can control access to critical vehicle systems. When an independent mechanic connects their diagnostic tool, they are often accessing a gateway controlled by the manufacturer's telematics. In many cases, the manufacturer determines what data they see, which systems they can access, and which repairs they can perform. The telematics provider Geotab, which partners with multiple OEMs including Volkswagen Group and Stellantis, openly advertises that their systems integrate original equipment manufacturer data to provide seamless fleet connectivity. Translation: they're building the infrastructure that locks independent repairers out while giving dealers total access. The market is massive. The European telematics software and service market was valued at 15.78 billion euros in 2024 and is projected to reach 36.5 billion euros by 2033. That's not revenue from selling cars. That's revenue from controlling the data and repair access for cars already sold. OEM telematics platforms use frequency-based data reporting that varies by manufacturer, from every few seconds to every few minutes. Every error, every component status, every repair need is logged and transmitted. Manufacturers know when your car needs service before you do. They can remotely diagnose faults. They can push software updates that change how your car operates. They can also remotely disable features or refuse to enable repairs performed by independent mechanics. And if you thought telematics control was bad, wait until you learn about parts pairing, the software technique that makes even genuine OEM parts unusable unless the manufacturer authorizes them. This is where the right to repair becomes completely meaningless. Parts pairing is serialization weaponized against repair. Every component in modern cars, from cameras to control modules to batteries, contains a digital serial number. The vehicle's computer knows which specific parts are authorized for that VIN. Replace a part, even with an identical genuine part, and the car refuses to accept it without manufacturer authorization. This started with iPhones. Apple pioneered parts pairing to prevent independent screen repairs. Even using genuine Apple screens harvested from other iPhones triggered error messages. Tesla adopted it aggressively. Now, European manufacturers are implementing it systematically. It's the same technology that John Deere uses to prevent farmers from repairing their own tractors, and it's spreading through the automotive industry like a virus. How it works: when you replace, say, a headlight module, That module has a unique serial number. Your car's computer detects the replacement and checks with the manufacturer's servers. Is this part authorized for VIN WBA12345? Without proper authorization, the part either doesn't work at all or triggers constant error messages. Sometimes features are disabled, adaptive headlights stop adapting, cameras don't calibrate properly, error lights stay illuminated. The only solution? Visit a dealer with access to manufacturer systems. They perform a software initialization or parts pairing procedure that normally costs between 80 and 200 euros depending on the component. You've bought the part, you've installed it correctly, it's physically identical to the old one, but you must pay the manufacturer for permission to use it. This applies to aftermarket parts too. Independent parts suppliers make perfectly functional replacements for everything from sensors to control modules, but even if the part is electronically identical, the car's computer rejects it based on serial number authentication. The EU directive says manufacturers cannot impede the use of second-hand or 3D printed spare parts by independent repairers, but parts pairing does exactly that, and manufacturers claim it's for safety and security. The Canadian automotive magazine L'Automobile published an investigation in December 2024 documenting how VIN locking threatens independent repair shops. Without access to manufacturers' proprietary reprogramming protocols, independent shops cannot integrate new parts into vehicle networks. Repairers must now master specialized software to reprogram modules. The article states, the restricted access to diagnostic tools and manufacturers' reprogramming protocols makes many repairs impossible. The aftermarket parts industry, which employs hundreds of thousands across Europe, is being systematically destroyed. Small independent suppliers can manufacture perfect replacement parts but can't make them work because they don't have access to manufacturers' authorization systems. It's creating artificial scarcity for profit. Over-the-air software updates sound convenient. Your car downloads new software automatically, like your smartphone. But here's what manufacturers don't tell you. These updates can and do lock you out of repairs you were previously able to perform. BMW pushed OTA updates that locked ECUs that were previously unlockable. One day, your ECU could be accessed with standard bench unlock tools. After an update, downloaded automatically while your car sat in your garage. It's encrypted and requires the FEMTO service. You didn't consent, you weren't warned. Your car just became more locked down overnight. These updates target not just performance modifications but legitimate repairs. According to reports from tuning companies and independent mechanics, BMW's OTA updates can detect when vehicles have been to independent shops and may restrict diagnostic access afterwards. Many technicians report that cars know when they weren't serviced at dealers and respond by limiting what future mechanics can access. Mercedes, Volkswagen, and Tesla all deploy regular OTA updates. The official purpose is bug fixes and feature enhancements. The actual effect is increasing manufacturer control while decreasing owner autonomy. Tesla famously used OTA updates to disable supercharging on salvage title vehicles, reducing their value and functionality without owner consent. The EU Data Act, becoming applicable September 12, 2025, is intended to force manufacturers to give drivers control over vehicle data, but early implementation shows manufacturers complying minimally, providing data access while maintaining software control. You can see the data your car generates, but you can't change how it operates. You're granted visibility without authority. These software locks aren't accidental or security measures, they're profit centers. Let me show you the money trail from your locked out car to dealer network billions, and why every manufacturer is copying this model. Follow the money. Market research estimates that the automotive dealer management system market was valued at around 4.4 billion euros globally in 2024, and is projected to reach approximately 7.9 billion euros by 2030, representing strong double-digit growth. These aren't systems for selling cars. These are software platforms that control who can repair them. Dealer management systems integrate inventory, customer relationship management, service scheduling, parts ordering, and, critically, diagnostic access. Dealers pay manufacturers or licensed software providers for these systems. The systems then enforce manufacturer control over repairs, ensuring that only authorized dealers can perform certain services. The profitability is staggering. According to European automotive dealership market analysis, parts and service options are contributing increasingly to dealer cash flow as new vehicle sales slow. Industry reports suggest service operations are experiencing strong growth rates through 2030, while new vehicle sales growth stagnates. Subscription-based diagnostic packages, extended warranty sales, and mandatory software updates reinforce profitability when unit sales slow. Translation: manufacturers make more money locking you into dealer service than they do selling you the car. it's subscription revenue model applied to vehicles. You pay €40,000 for the car up front, then manufacturers extract hundreds annually through mandatory dealer visits for repairs you should be able to perform independently. Germany represents a substantial portion of the European automotive dealership market. As the home of BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, and Audi, Germany profits immensely from this model. These companies pioneered software locks and now export them globally. The German automotive industry lobby is among the most powerful in the EU, which explains why right-to-repair enforcement remains toothless. Software vendors like Reynolds & Reynolds, CDK Global, Techion, and Dealer Socket provide the infrastructure. They sell dealer management platforms that cost €10,000 to €50,000 annually per dealership, multiplied across thousands of European dealers. The platforms include diagnostic capabilities that independent mechanics cannot access at any price. Independent shops are priced out systematically. To access manufacturer diagnostic systems legally, they must purchase licenses costing between €5,000 and €15,000 annually per manufacturer. A shop servicing multiple brands needs multiple licenses. Then they need the compatible hardware. Professional diagnostic tools cost €3,000 to €10,000 each. Then they need training, which manufacturers provide only through expensive certification programs. The barrier to entry is now so high that only large chains can compete with dealer networks. Small independent mechanics, the backbone of European automotive repair for decades, are being eliminated not by regulation or consumer preference, but by software locks they cannot circumnavigate legally. Let's be clear about what the EU directive actually accomplishes and what it doesn't. The Right to Repair Directive covers physical spare parts, basic repair information, and bans on contractual restrictions. It's meaningful progress for household appliances and electronics. For cars, the situation is more complex. The directive technically applies to all products with repair requirements under EU law, which interacts with existing automotive regulations, but vehicles are primarily governed separately by the Motor Vehicle Block Exemption Regulations and Euro 5 and 6 emission standards. These pre-existing frameworks already required manufacturers to provide technical information to independent mechanics. The Right to Repair Directive addresses gaps for consumer goods, but automotive software locks largely fall outside its enforcement mechanisms. What it does do requires manufacturers to make spare parts available at a reasonable price to all parties in the repair sector, prohibits practices preventing use of second-hand or 3D printed parts, forbids refusal to repair solely for economic reasons or because previous repairs were done independently. What it doesn't do, provide enforcement mechanisms specific to automotive software locks, define what constitutes reasonable price for parts, require manufacturers to provide software access, encryption keys, or diagnostic authorization, mandate interoperability between manufacturer systems and independent tools, establish penalties for circumnavigating the directive through software. The repairs clause for visible spare parts, adopted by the EU Council in 2024 after 3 decades of debate, addresses design monopolies on body panels and glass. Manufacturers can no longer use design rights to prevent independent suppliers from making replacement parts like bumpers and headlights. Important for physical parts, but irrelevant for software. The practical result: independent mechanics can buy physical parts but can't install them without dealer authorization. They can access generic diagnostic codes but not manufacturer-specific systems. They can advertise repair services but can't perform them on increasingly locked vehicles. The right exists on paper. The ability doesn't exist in practice. Member states are implementing the directive into national law throughout 25 and 26. Early indications show weak enforcement. No country has established mechanisms to audit manufacturer software for compliance. No regulator has demanded encryption key access or parts pairing termination. Manufacturers are complying with the letter of the law while completely ignoring its intent. Your options for resisting this lockout are limited but not non-existent. Here's what you can actually do. First, avoid manufacturers with the most aggressive software locks when buying. BMW and Mercedes lead in encryption deployment. Volkswagen Group is catching up. Tesla has always been locked. Japanese manufacturers, Toyota, Honda, Mazda, have been slower to implement aggressive software restrictions, though this is changing. Korean brands, Hyundai and Kia, currently offer better independent repairability, but monitor this closely. Second, keep older vehicles running longer. Cars manufactured before 2020 generally have more repairable ECUs and less embedded telematics. A 2015 to 2019 vehicle often requires no FEMTO locking, has standard OBD2 diagnostics accessible to independent shops, and doesn't have over-the-air update capabilities. The right to repair exists de facto in older cars because the software restrictions don't. Third, support independent mechanics vocally. Every time you choose an independent shop over a dealer for services they can still perform, you're voting with your wallet. Leave reviews, recommend them publicly. Independent shops are fighting for survival against manufacturer lockouts. Your support matters. Fourth, Demand accountability from regulators, contact your MEPs, write to national consumer protection agencies, file complaints when you encounter software-based repair obstacles. The EU Data Act enforcement begins September 2025. Make noise about automotive exemptions and weak implementation. Regulators respond to public pressure. Right now, they hear only from industry lobbyists. Fifth, exercise your data rights under GDPR and the Data Act. Request all data manufacturers hold about your vehicle. Demand deletion when selling or trading. Object to processing you haven't explicitly consented to. Make manufacturers work for their surveillance profits. Every data request costs them administrative time and money. Sixth, document and publicize repair obstacles. When you encounter software locks, parts pairing restrictions, or dealer-only repairs, document them. Share experiences online. Automotive consumer advocacy groups like BEUC, European Consumer Organization, and national groups compile evidence for regulatory pressure. Your experience becomes leverage. Seventh, consider legal action for flagrant violations. When manufacturers explicitly prevent repairs the directive guarantees, consider small claims or consumer court. Individual cases rarely succeed against corporate legal terms, but documented patterns of violations create regulatory pressure. Some national consumer groups are considering class action approaches. The brutal truth? Meaningful change requires legislative revision with enforcement teeth. The current directive fails because it doesn't mandate software openness, encryption key sharing, or parts pairing prohibition. Until those requirements exist with real penalties, manufacturers will continue circumventing through code. The EU Right to Repair Directive is a masterclass in regulatory capture. It creates the appearance of consumer protection while leaving manufacturers every tool they need to maintain monopolistic control. The law says you can repair, the software says you can't, and when those contradict, software wins. This isn't about security or safety. If it were, manufacturers wouldn't charge €200 for the authorization to use a part you've already bought and installed correctly. It's not about quality control. Independent mechanics have maintained vehicle quality for generations. It's about control and profit extraction. Manufacturers discovered they can make more money from denying repairs than from enabling them. The BMW FEMTO monopoly is the perfect example. One company in one country holds repair access for millions of vehicles across Europe. That's not a security measure. It's a deliberately created bottleneck that forces you into paying extortionate fees for basic access to your own property. And it's legal because the legislation never addressed it. Parts pairing makes even genuine parts unusable without manufacturer blessing. Telematics give remote control over vehicles you supposedly own. Over-the-air updates lock you out overnight. Dealer management systems generate billions from enforcing these restrictions. All of this happens after the Right to Repair Directive passed, because the directive was written to sound strong while being practically worthless. The future is worse. As more vehicles ship with embedded telematics, as encryption becomes standard across all brands, as over-the-air updates become ubiquitous, manufacturer control becomes absolute. You'll own the metal and plastic, they'll own the software that makes it function, and without their permission, which they can revoke or charge for at will, your €50,000 car is a brick. The EU gave you the right to repair. Manufacturers gave you an encrypted lockout and a dealer network invoice. Until enforcement matches legislation, the right is completely fake. If this investigation revealed how fake your repair rights really are, use the hype feature below to help grow our community. This content needs to reach every European car owner who thinks they can still repair what they've paid for, before they discover the truth at a dealer service desk with a €1,500 bill for software authorization.